I've come here today to talk about, it's very much a lot of logistical, operational activity that is involved in planning an event. And I'm also very conscious, certainly from Isabel's presentation there, that we have, with a big mix of people from voluntary bodies, individuals, public bodies, with various levels of resource available to them. I looked at this from the point of view of like starting, I suppose, really an event. Starting an event, you're starting with like any project that you start on. And you want to figure out, what the aims of the event are. You have to figure out, why you are doing the event. Who is it for? Some people want to connect more locally. It is that whole family demographic that is attracted to our heritage and to our culture as well. It's hugely important. Is it tourists? Have you got something? Have you got a hidden gem at the moment in terms of heritage that tourists are not going to see? Who then are your stakeholders and partners in relation to what you're doing? So do look quite broadly at stakeholders and partners, and don't forget local authorities, particularly if they have an arts office, if they have a community section. You'll find very often that they will have benefit in kind contributions that they can make to your event that will save you money. Is there a legacy outcome? I think for every one of us, particularly in the public sector, when we spend money, we like to know that we actually are giving something back, and we're giving something that will actually live on after us. This would be the main area that I would have a lot of experience in. And again, I look at these things all the time like projects, and every project has a number of different headings that you will look at in it. Finance, some people sometimes think immediately, say funding, and you think that finance is the only area that you might have to think about in terms of finance and other legal issues. But you've got funding, you have insurance, you might have a venue at the moment that you do, it could be a visitor centre, it could be a library, and you have particular activity that happens in it all the time, and you've been provided with insurance for that purpose. But then you might decide you're going to have a circus performance in your venue for Heritage Week, and you have to just kind of revisit your insurance, maybe have a chat with your insurance company, and just make absolutely certain that you're actually insured for that. Because sometimes when you step outside of your normal business, there may be some additional risk, and your insurers might want to know about that. Agreements, and when I say agreements, I don't mean a document of 10 pages in terms of a legal agreement. There will be some of those, but what I'm referring to really is everything written down in terms of if you have artists who are going to be commissioned, if you have a service provider who's going to provide you with marquees, if you have somebody who's doing your catering for you, just make absolutely certain that there is an email or there's something in writing there that says this is what you're looking for, this is what they're providing, and this is the fee that you're paying for it. Because sometimes verbal is great, and the relationships between people are brilliant, particularly when you have good working relationships with providers, but you do need to make sure that you know what you're getting and that they're very clear about what you want. And then permissions is another area. Again, it doesn't apply to everybody, but you might decide in your particular venue, you may not normally have catering facilities, so you might decide that you want to bring in casual traders, you might decide you'd like to have a nice ice cream vendor, and these are also ways, just to say, these are also ways sometimes of making money. A lot of the time when you see markets at events, it's very much for financial purposes, because it's actually a very good way if you can get a fee from somebody. So if you bring an ice cream vendor into your site for the day, they'll pay you a fee to be there because they know that you have a promoted event and they know that you're going to get an audience. But just do remember that if it's on a private site, that's great, but just think about, make sure they have got their certifications from the likes of the HSE. Just do check, because you don't want people walking away with food poisoning from anything that ends up, that you deliver on that day from your great event. On the PR and marketing and communication side, and I know there's a couple of speakers later on PR marketing and communication, so, and again it's going back to what Isabel was saying, you can get the Heritage Week brochure, and the website is just fantastic in terms of getting advertising and promotion for your event. And the events that I did for Heritage Week were quite small, but I always got somebody who came to me because they had seen it in the brochure or they saw it on the website. And you really can't pay for that. The other thing, as Isabel was saying, local radio, local media. A great photo and if you're working in communications, a great photo will just sell you. And so think about how you can get that great photo. And also think about, really do look around your area and see, have you any celebrities? Well, if you're anywhere near colleges or near universities that have media and communications courses, there's an awful lot of students. I know when there was an ice rink in Dundalk at one stage, and I think it was the actual communications guys that actually did all the video footage of all the matches there. So do check in with your local colleges and see. There's a lot of event students in colleges now who actually, they need their hours in terms of credits for their courses, and they need to go out and work on events, and they're looking for interesting work. You know, they don't want to be going and just, you know, standing at doors. So they're looking for interesting work. They're interested in programming. They're interested in looking at helping you with marketing and communication. So do go searching for them. The next headings then that I have here on the programming. The programming is an area, I suppose, where you can, when you start out first, you sort of maybe just forget a little bit about the budgets, forget about the health and safety a little bit, forget about the logistics, and give yourself the opportunity to think of nothing except being a little bit wild in terms of your programming. Don't throw anything out. You know, like, let everybody think, even if it's the maddest idea, let everybody put that idea on the table. But then you need, and this is where I suppose I would be saying, programming actually takes quite a bit of time. There's lots of different ideas that can kind of be, that you think about, but then you need to give yourself a little bit of time to actually allow those ideas to simmer a little bit. You need to simmer on them a little bit, and then you need to have those kind of like really kind of wild ideas, and then you maybe need to have to look at them and kind of draw them back. If you look around again your area, you'll find artists. I found artists that live beside me that have done events for me. We've found photography clubs, and photography clubs are great because photography clubs love taking photos, and they love taking photos of their local area, and they love sharing them. And they'll put them up on websites for you, and they will provide them for you free. And there's a huge interest in photography now, so go looking for local photography clubs because they're really, really valuable. Unique events as well. Have a look around, and I think it's that whole thing as well about there's so much happens in Heritage Week, and you're probably competing with other people that are beside you, but also competition is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity as well to collaborate. But always be conscious of what everybody else is doing and what their program is like. Does it match with yours? Are you doing anything different? Can you do something different? 1,800 events, so 1,800 events, and you want to lift your event up, so you want to be seen, so you have to find something a little bit quirky to add into your event to actually kind of raise yourself up. But also collaborations are good as well, because you may have someone who, you know, has a writer in residence, or who has a writer who's actually speaking at their event, and you might not be doing your events on the same day, and there may be value in actually asking that writer to talk at both the events. I mean, there's always value in that as well. Production is a bit, I suppose, in a way you kind of can't get away from. Even if you're doing an event in your own venue, and your venue usually has maybe 10 people a day walking through it, and on this particular day you're going to have maybe 100 people or 150 people walking through it, suddenly you've got hundreds of members of the public coming through, you do have to rethink. You just have to rethink, how is this going to work? Is my venue suitable for what I'm thinking about doing? And this is now where you start to assess your programme based on your venue, based on your facilities, based on your funding. And if I was to talk as well about areas where I think like it's really important to have professionals help as well, if needed, depending on how big your event is going to be, production and health and safety would be the two. The administration piece and the resource and the timing. The timing, I suppose, working from that one backwards, I suppose it's never too early to start thinking about, you know, what you're going to do for next year. I think actually thinking about what you're going to do for next year starts the minute you've finished your previous year's event. And it starts with your evaluation and your post-event, you know, kind of review of what you did last year. And every time, like say for an event that I would do, the first piece of paper I would have would be the outcomes. And it's a bit, again, as Isabella showed us here this morning, they have done the review of what happened last year, and from that it sort of educates you and it tells you something about, you know, where you might want to increase some of your activities. If you had intended that you were going to have a family-orientated event, but in actual fact, most of the people that came were actually individuals or couples. You might need to think more about the type of events that you're actually running. So the review is just hugely important, and in order to, so that's where I would say timing starts for any event. It's actually from the minute you finish the last one. And then in terms of your resource, and again, I'm going to go back again to resource. Resource again for anybody who's near colleges. Resource again, volunteers. And on the health and safety side, most of you, actually, if a lot of you are involved in venues, you probably have a health and safety statement for your venue already. But I always go back to the thing about health and safety is really just common sense. But it's also good to have, if you have an awareness and you're sort of very used to your venue, it's always good to get somebody else to come in, tell them what you're thinking about doing in your venue, and then get them to walk around and see, because sometimes other people will see things much quicker than you will. As well, I think on health and safety as well, I would say kind of local authorities again, try and see is there, fire safety officers are very helpful in terms of if you have fire safety officers or fire brigade in your area, they can be very helpful. They know a lot about crowd management, they know a lot about people, moving people in and out of venues, and they can be very helpful in relation to supporting you with something like this. If you can get somebody who can maybe come down and give you half an hour to look around your venue. The other people who can also be very helpful is the Gardaí as well, because when you increase your numbers in terms of your venue, sometimes you're also maybe opening yourself up to a little bit more possibly antisocial behaviour, thefts, maybe people just having to be more careful of their handbags and their money. And very often Gardaí can come in and they'll say to you, maybe that corner there, you might shut that off because actually that's just a little bit of that could be a problem area for you. So there is support out there in kind that you can get for some of these areas of expertise. But if you're thinking of doing, I would say an event over and above 100, 200 people, just do consider maybe just seriously looking at your health and safety statement and maybe just getting somebody else in to kind of give you a little bit of support on it. This then is an outline of what should be in an event plan. I would say that even if an event plan is only half a page or if it's 10 pages long, I think you should still do one for your event no matter how small it is. And this is just a very general outline, and I have some details of some documents that are available freely from Dublin City Council that you can look at for more detail on some of these headings. But basically what you do is you're going to give a summary of your event. Your safety statement is just literally your statement of intent in terms of the fact that you're going to say to people, and you are saying that I'm going to run my event safely and I'm going to put all my measures in place that will actually make sure that that happens. Your key personnel and contact details. Now this probably requires a little bit of thought because your key personnel in terms of your event are very much your event manager. So your event manager should be very familiar with your venue. They should have the competency to understand how the venue works, and they should also have the competency to know what the potential issues and risks are around the actual activity that you're thinking of putting on the day or the week. Your other key personnel would be the person who's going to take responsibility for safety on the day. Again, with a smaller event, sometimes this can be the one person wearing 3 hats, because you might have them as head of security and kind of crowd management as well. But it's a really good idea to have a deputy or an assistant who can actually step in, because this is all great when everything just goes very smoothly. But then if you have an incident that occurs that you have to go off and look at, you need somebody else to step into your shoes. The event details and management then is a much more detailed outline of what exactly is going to happen. So it can be things as simple as toilet facilities. So what are the toilet facilities in your venue? Do you have enough access for disability facilities? Have you got enough facilities for catering on the day? And if you haven't, how are you going to actually manage that? Waste management on the day. You may normally have, maybe 1 bag of waste a week going out of your venue, but on this particular day you could end up with 5 bags in that day. So how is all that going to be managed? Where is it going to be stored? Do you have storage space? Who's going to pick up the litter on the day? And again, this is where volunteers, voluntary staff, I suppose it's one of the things in terms of events. like seeing overflowing bins and things like that is just something that completely, it just puts that bad black mark on your event that you really can't get over, you know what I mean? And it's so easy. Your local authority might be able to help you with actually supplying you with litter pickers and bags and waste bags. So again, anything that you think, write down a list of any of these items that you think a local authority might be able to support you with. They mightn't be giving you funding, but they might be able to supply you with a benefit in kind opportunity with, say, infrastructure or equipment. And then your risk assessment, your event safety and emergency action. Again, a lot of you will have this in your safety statement if you have venues. You will probably have to maybe relook at it because you may decide, for example, most of your activity in your venue normally might be indoors, and for this particular week you could be doing something outdoors. So now you have more of an issue, say, in terms of weather and the impact of weather on people. And there's absolutely no harm in bringing different people in to review and look at your risk assessment with you. Bring people in. If you're going to invite a family audience, if you have friends who have children, older people, bring older people in and get, ask them to say, well, what would be the problems for you if you were walking around here for the day? And I think that's something else as well that I've become very conscious of. Sometimes older people in crowds, or just be very conscious of that as well in terms of crowd movement in venues. Because it's something I've seen a little bit more of. We talk a lot about disability, we talk a lot about families, but I think older people as well, just kind of have that little bit of extra care and attention around them just to make sure that they feel safe in the environment. And then the emergency action then is really, again, what are you going to do if you have an emergency? Now, in a lot of cases, that is simply you're going to call 999. It's good to notify your statutory agency that you're having an event. Because if an emergency call comes to them, if you let them know, even though you don't have to, there's a licensing system for events over 5,000 people at any one time. There's in the City Council, if you're doing an event in a public space, you do have to apply for a permission. But if you're in a private venue and you're going to have 100 people today, whereas normally you only have 5, it's a really good practice to let your local fire service know, to let the Gardaí know, even to let your local hospital know. Because if an emergency happens at your venue, they could potentially have 100 patients coming at them. Or if they're sending an ambulance, they might think, oh, there's only 5 people there, whereas in actual fact they have 100. So it's good to let people know that. Another resource that can be made available to you as well, if you have a local civil defence provides free services for most community events, and that can include medical services. And if they're coming in to do the medical services, while they don't like to do stewarding per se, they can sometimes have their medical first aiders can be doing walkabout. So effectively they're an extra pair of eyes on the ground for you as well. And then your appendices in your plan include your site. It's always a really good idea to have a layout of your site and a map indicating where everything is at your venue. And then the other thing that I have seen over the years is people write these wonderful plans. I've seen plans that are 150 pages long, and I've seen plans that are 10 pages long, and I see appendices and checklists. I rarely see checklists, or I rarely see, you'll find an incident report form. Everybody wants to know they have a form to fill out when there's an accident. Everybody talks about how you need to check your site before you actually start your event, check your site during your event, and then do your kind of shutdown of your site after the event. But one of the downfalls is people don't print off a checklist, and they don't actually go out and actually check off their checklist before their event, during their event, and after the event. And if anything ever happens at your event, that's the only thing that you can produce to a judge. In addition to your competent people, it's the only thing you can produce to a judge to say, listen, I did the job I was supposed to do in terms of making sure that my venue was fit for purpose. So that's very quick run through what you need. These are just top tips, just things that came into my head when I was kind of thinking about where are the areas where I kind of see weaknesses for people sometimes. Budget and timing, always put in your contingency. 10 to 15% I would say at the beginning, and you can reduce this as you get closer to your event, but make sure you have it in there. Written agreements for everything, as I said already, really important. Yeah, the PR and marketing again. Competitions is actually one I didn't mention, but competitions, if you get somebody on radio who's interested in, if you run a competition, if you have a local hotel in your area, get a weekend for 2 from them, and see can you get a local radio to take it up as a competition, because I think that's really effective. Communications plan, this is something just maybe a little bit different to the PR and marketing, but actually write out who are all the people that you have to let know about your event, every single group. How are you going to actually tell them about your event, and when are you going to tell them about your event? And that actually then kind of helps you to deliver and think about what your PR and marketing program is going to be as well. The programming then, you know, go wild, do research artists in your local area. There's an awful lot of talent out there, really a huge amount of talent out there that doesn't get tapped into for community use at all, and people are only too delighted to get involved. And then when you've kind of done all your kind of research and you've gone really kind of like, you know, looked at all your quirky ideas for your programming, you do have to come back and you do have to checklist it against your production, your funding, your resource and your safety, because that at the end of the day then will dictate to you how much you can actually deliver of it. These are just useful publications, and I have 2 of them with me and we can just send them around the room, but just recently the Arts Office of Dublin City Council did a review of local arts festivals. And they have now published a local arts festival toolkit, which is actually really useful. And there's also then a guideline for event organisers, and that goes through some of what I've talked about in more detail in terms of your event, you know, planning your event and writing out your plan. And both of them are available on, if you go online to www.dublincity.ie. Another great resource is, I don't know if any of you have come across it, it's called Recreate. Recreate are a group out in an industrial estate. I don't know exactly which industrial estate it is, I can't remember, but they get donations of recyclable, reusable materials. And they are fantastic for using for artists, you know, for workshops with children. It's absolutely brilliant. So, and if you can't, say, afford to sign up to Recreate, try and encourage your local authority to sign up and become a member of Recreate. Because then if you find an artist, you can partner with your local authority, and then you can go in and get all of this material for free. The Event Industry Association of Ireland is something that I am involved in. We're trying to set up a network, a support network for people who are involved in events in the country. We are only fledgling at the minute, but you are more than welcome to go online, and there's no subscription or registration for that. We have lots of people who are experts in their field, and at the moment we're happy to advise people to give you support, or if you're looking for particular supplies of something, we can actually give you tips as to where to go for that. The other thing, Eventbrite as well, for anybody, even if you're doing free events, try and see is there some way that you can ticket them. Because I ticketed the Heritage Week event that I did last year, and I actually got people who were from the local area who actually didn't even know the park that we were actually in, and they came to the event because they logged on Eventbrite. And Eventbrite is a free ticketing service for free events. You don't have to pay for it. And it has the advantage that you get the list of the people, you can manage it yourself, and you can also do a survey on it afterwards as well. So you can survey all the people who came to your event afterwards and ask them what they thought of it. So it's a really good resource. And then Aero and the Arts Council mapping your audience tool. You probably all know that we have a census coming up this year, and these are tools that are used where they've taken the information out of the census. And one example would be if you have an event and you're primarily looking for, say, students or young people to attend it, you can use these tools to look at the demographics in your local area, and you can see where, you know, like the number of, say, young people or students are living. And then if you have a very limited budget for your marketing, you can then actually target your marketing at that particular area. So if you're putting posters in shops, you can actually put them into these areas that will actually show you the age audience. So they're extremely good tools, and all free. Again, just make sure you obtain all your licenses and permissions. If you're not sure, go in and ask your local authority. They'll guide you on that. As I said, connect early with your statutory agencies, even if it's only just to let them know that, listen, I'm here and I'm doing something in Heritage Week. Do give some consideration to competent staff and key positions. Again, you know, in the same way as I said, in terms of artists in local areas, there's also competent people. Like I'm qualified in health and safety, and I would have done the event management plan for my local St. Patrick's Day parade. So, and there's lots of people like me out there, and there's lots of people out there who have competency in in marketing and PR and everything else that are more than willing to help. And then brief your staff very well. That is one thing. Make sure staff do know what they're doing. There's nothing worse than seeing people running around and actually not knowing what they're doing at an event. So just do make sure that all the staff do know what they're, if you can, write out, even if it's only half a page of a job description for people. And the other thing I would also say about staff is, particularly if it's volunteers, so they're coming in and doing it for, for free, just make sure they're looked after on the day. And if you can at all, give them a little bit of time to go out and experience the event as well, because that's a really important piece for them as well. So give them a little bit of a break time that they can actually participate as well. And do your post-event review and evaluation. I can't emphasise that much. I mean, every year I heard the great, it's great to have your figures. Every year it's really important. It's the only thing that shows you the pattern of what your event and the potential for your event to grow as well. And most importantly, I have to say to you, enjoy the gig and head for the skies. All right? Okay, thanks a million.